Welcome back to Explain America. This is your host, Kyle Becker. Now, let me ask you something. Why is it that every time Trump makes a move against the left, the media, the tech giants, the NGOs, and radical billionaires, they all start panicking at the same time? Why is it that when he calls for justice, they call it fascism? And why is it that the same people who poured billions into nonprofits and charities and election integrity, well, these groups suddenly go silent when their names start showing up in federal investigations? Well, ask yourself, why are billionaire elites, people like George Soros, Reid Hoffman, and Bill Gates, always hiding behind philanthropy while quietly shaping U.S. policy, undermining elections, and, it seems, funding chaos in the streets? So Trump, he has launched the biggest crackdown on left-wing political violence in U.S. history, and these billionaires, well, they seem to be implicated. And that's not a theory. It's not a maybe. It's happening. So before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and comment. This is how we fight back against the left that is trying to silence us, and that's how we push common sense journalism as a solution to the partisan nonsense. So, President Donald Trump, he just signed a federal memorandum that gave marshals the full force of the U.S. government, including the FBI, Treasury, IRS, DOJ, and more, to target and dismantle what the White House is now calling officially left-wing domestic terrorism. But here's the real kicker. It's not just about street-level thugs. It's about the money men behind the scenes. So according to White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, this is the first time in American history that the government is going after the financiers of organized political violence. And FBI Director Kash Patel, he said it plainly, we're going to follow the money. So this new Trump order calls on federal agencies to investigate not just the activists, but the donors, officers, and employees of the organizations funding these groups, including tax-exempt 501c3s. And that's where the walls start closing in on the biggest names in Democrat politics. So let's start with George Soros. A senior DOJ official recently sent a letter to federal prosecutors in New York and California directing them to open criminal investigations into Soros's Open Society foundations. Charges on the table: racketeering, material support for terrorism, and arson. The Soros network immediately called it a politically motivated attack. But they're nervous because even if one grantee is tied to violence or intimidation, Soros's top people could face federal charges. And then there's Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn billionaire and one of the biggest Democratic donors of the last decade. He's quietly vanishing from politics this year. Why? Well, according to insiders, he's scared. He's pulling back because he knows what's coming. And then there's Bill Gates. You've heard the name in the Epstein files. You've heard about the quiet meetings and the shady connections. Now we're learning that Gates dumped $50 million into groups backing Kamala Harris in 2024. And that made him one of the biggest private funders of the Democratic ticket. And did the media report the latest news on him? Hardly. Because, well, here's the truth. Gates isn't just a tech guy. He's not just a Democratic megadonor or global influencer. He is somebody who's now tied pretty strongly to Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, this is just speculation, but his name is in the black book, and it appears from the evidence that he went to Epstein Island. So we're wondering, what more is there to this story? Well, we're going to have to get the real news on that and the evidence of that, but hopefully there will be some investigations, right, Pam Bondi? So the swamp isn't just in D.C. It's global and systemic, and there's a billionaire class that bankrolls Democrat dominance, and it's finally under the microscope. So this might be the move that brings the entire operation crashing down. If Trump has his way, we're not just talking about draining the swamp. We're talking about handcuffs, seizures, federal charges, and possibly the end of the Democratic Party as we know it. And what do you think about that? Do you think that it's high time for these NGOs and these radical billionaires to be held to account to explain what they're doing with all of that money and what people are doing in the United States and if it's putting us at risk? Because we appreciate hearing from you at Explain America.